Good afternoon and happy Sunday. Today I wanted to continue by talking about images. And the reason I'm doing this is I got to thinking yesterday about my discussion of suffering and my example of Christ on the cross and how we're all called to embrace our suffering. It's a choice we make. It's what gives our suffering meaning. And the more I thought about it, the more I reflected on how Protestants don't use crucifixes. And I'd be interested to start a conversation in the chat box if any Protestant friends or others who follow this on YouTube want to explain to me why exactly Protestants don't use crucifixes. In my mind, it is a great poverty for Protestants that they have done away with that image, which is so important to us Christians, not just Catholics, but all Christians. And my understanding, the best that I know, it has to do with the prohibition against graven images and the idea that somehow we would be worshiping a thing rather than the true God. And I don't think that this is accurate to the human experience at all. First of all, it's not accurate to what Christ himself did in becoming incarnate. We don't worship a human being simply because God became man when we bow before our incarnate Lord. And similarly, when a Catholic looks upon a crucifix, looks upon that image of Christ on the cross, he's not worshiping the image, but rather that image helps him to make that connection with what the image stands for, what it stands in place of. And as I said, this is also accurate to our human experience. If you have a treasured picture, for instance, of a loved one who has passed away, and you treasure that picture, if by chance you kiss that picture and remember your loved one, are you somehow mistaking the image for that person whom you're remembering, whom that image helps you to remember? I don't think so. So in my mind, it's a great poverty to our Protestant brethren that they don't make use, especially of the crucifix. But by extension, I would argue that our images of the saints, the statues, the icons, and the other images similarly, there's nothing wrong with that either, because these are beloved members of the Church Triumphant, fellow Christians who've completed their journey and whom we admire. So to have statues not only of Christ, crucifixes with Christ on them, but also statues, is certainly in keeping with our belief that the saints are part of the church, whether they are still fighting the good fight as the church militant here on earth, or whether they've passed on before us and are enjoying the beatific vision. There's certainly nothing wrong with images of them. And to say that Catholics somehow worship the image because they reverence it, because they kiss it or even pray before it, is truly to do a disservice to the conversation that we Catholics and Protestants could have on this. The other claim that has always struck me as a little odd is that this is sort of an accretion, a Catholic add-on, and it wasn't practiced by the early church. And I actually have a visual today besides the crucifix to show you. I wanted to show you this image right here. Hopefully this shows up in the video well. This is from an archaeological dig below St. Peter's, actually, which occurred in the 1930s. And you may see this trapdoor here. This was an entrance in, which occurred earlier. So it wasn't the first time this mausoleum was seen, but it was re-entered in the 1930s. And what was found is that this was the mausoleum of a Christian family. It had been buried when the first St. Peter's was constructed. But what the archaeologists and the art historians have discerned is that this is an image of Christ. He takes the place of Helios, the sun god, and this imagery has been borrowed by the Christians in the first century of Christianity. You can see the cruciform nature of the rays. You can see the imagery of the vine and the branches. And this image of Christ, which is a visual depiction, is from the first century. So who's faithful to the history of Christianity? Is it the Catholic Church, which makes use of images of Christ and of the saints? Or is it the Protestant Church which has impoverished itself by its abandonment of those images? That's all I have time for today. God bless.